Hello, welcome to Certified Jams. On this channel, I share my favorite songs and we talk about what makes them great. Today, we're talking about the song Let Down by Radiohead, and I'm going to tell you why it's a certified jam. I'm sorry, but that 30-second chunk of music, if that's not the best thing Radiohead's ever created, then I don't know what the you're talking about, because that's perfect. Okay, so Radiohead is a huge band, lots and lots of fans, lots of talk online about Radiohead. They're one of my favorite bands. I love Radiohead, and this album in particular, I think, is just an absolute masterpiece. So this song, Let Down, is from the album OK Computer, which was released in 1997. There's a lot of debate online about which album by Radiohead is the best album. Lots of people ranking the worst to best. Personally, I think, and this is subjective, obviously, taste is subjective, but personally, I think OK Computer and In Rainbows just blow every other Radiohead album out of the water. They're up here, and the rest of them are down here. But with that being said, obviously, everyone has different opinions. But in my opinion, this record is at the top of the list, sort of right along with In Rainbows. When a lot of people talk about the best Radiohead albums, and then this album comes up, I think a lot of people miss the context of when this album was released and the impact that it had on the music industry and just the sound of music after this record. This record influenced so many people, so many musicians. There are so many bands that just wouldn't exist or wouldn't have the same sound that they have now if it wasn't for this record. This record was a revolution. And I don't think any of the other Radiohead albums can claim that title. This one came out right after The Bends, which was a great album, but it was very guitar heavy. And then when this one came out, it sort of introduced all these other interesting sounds and production techniques that not a lot of other bands were using at the time. This album was produced by Nigel Godrich, who is a guy who's produced a lot of great records. He's produced a bunch of Beck stuff, including Sea Change, which we've talked about in one of my other videos. He's produced a bunch of U2 records. Really talented guy, and I think he brought a lot to this record. I was fortunate enough to be able to see Radiohead live in 1996. I was 20 years old, and they were touring the Bends. And believe it or not, they actually played this song at that concert. So this is before OK Computer even came out. I don't remember hearing this song, but I know they did. I've looked at the set list, and I feel like very privileged to have been there that night. Funnily enough, too, the opening act for that show was David Gray, who no one knew who he was at the time, but there he was opening up for Radiohead. This was just at a small venue. I think there was maybe 600 people there. It was a place called Dinwoodies in Edmonton, and yeah, really lucky to have been there. Anyways, this song, Let Down, to me is just astonishing. It's so beautiful, and it's so interesting and unique musically and sort of production and vocal wise. I just think it's so amazing. One of the things that really sets it apart that I want to talk about before we start listening so you can listen for it is the beginning guitar part. It's this sort of atmospheric, sort of arpeggiated guitar, and there's two guitars playing different things, and one of the guitars, played by Johnny Greenwood, I think, is playing in 5/4 time, but the song itself is in 4/4 time. So when the drums come in and the bass and the other instruments, they're playing at 4/4, but this intro guitar part is playing at 5/4. And what that does is it creates this interesting, cyclical sort of swirling pattern where every time the main drum sort of section repeats, this guitar part is playing at a different point in its sort of cycle, and it creates these really interesting overtones with the other guitars and instruments, which I think just sort of add to the layering and the atmosphere of the song. It's really interesting. Anyways, let's get into the song, and then as we go, we can sort of break apart and talk about the different parts and why I think this song is amazing. All right, so this is Let Down by Radiohead. Before we get into the next part, a few things to mention. I think the drums are really interesting. I think he's playing with mallets, and I think he's, instead of a snare, he's actually just hitting a tambourine, at least in this part. And then you can hear him sort of hitting the toms as well. Really interesting drum pattern as well. It's sort of offbeat a little bit and amazing. And then, of course, the guitars, which we talked about, which are just like playing in a different time signature, but really just like add to the sort of swirling atmosphere. And then Tom York's vocals are just like amazing. I don't know how many different tracks or layers of vocals they're using, but it sounds so full. And it really sort of like creates this interesting tone and sort of sadness to the song. That to me is just stunning and beautiful. All right, let's keep going. Really great tom fills. And it starts back with the same guitar pattern from the beginning. You can really hear how many different vocal parts there are. And I think that's all just Tom York, just layers and layers, different harmonies. He's doubling up probably everything. It sounds so full. Awesome. Really neat little breakdown. Totally different guitar part. When this sort of breakdown and this build up sort of releases, there's this really interesting arpeggiated synth or something that plays that sounds almost like computerized wind chimes or something. I don't know what it is, but it's amazing, and it adds to the feel of this record, which is very much like there's a lot of like robotic sort of like computer sounds within it. This sort of blend of like organic instruments, but like computer based, like programmed really interesting synths and sounds. And this is a perfect example. You'll hear it when the breakdown sort of comes in the build up. Build up and release coming up, magic. I'm sorry, but that like 30-second chunk of music, if that's not the best thing Radiohead's ever created, then I don't know what the you're talking about, because that's perfect. And there you can really hear that arpeggiated synth, and then an acoustic guitar, which was probably there the whole time, but it's the first time you can hear it. Oh, so amazing. All right, that was Let Down by Radiohead, one of my all-time favorite songs. In my opinion, it's at the top of Radiohead's song list. Everyone's got their own opinions, obviously. I love so many Radiohead songs, but to me, every time I hear this, it just like has such a unique feeling, such unique instrumentation, such beautiful vocals. I just think it's like just sits above everything else. I'm going to talk about other Radiohead songs on this channel. This is the first one I've done because this is probably my favorite. But like I said, I love so many of the things that Radiohead has done. But to me, this one is definitely one of my favorites. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. Really appreciate it. If you like this song, chances are you'll like other songs that I've talked about. So check the channel out. Subscribe because it really helps out. And yeah, I appreciate you watching. Thanks so much.